Hey, how's it going out there, folks? Welcome back here to a Friday. Finally made it here to the weekend. My voice still just barely holding on, but hey, it's working at least. Latest activity here on this November 15, 2024 date, 8:12 a.m. Shows a 1.7 here across the area of Texas in an earthquake fashion there, earthquake swarm around the oil fields there of Texas. Now, overnight, did have some larger scale activity striking out here across the Papua New Guinea area. I didn't get a chance to do an update last night, but prior to that, I said to watch this area specifically for some further large-scale activity due to, you guessed it, all the deep earthquake activity bouncing back and forth here over this region recently. Quite a bit of deeper activity back here across the Tonga Trench, a lot of deeper activity here through the Indonesia Islands, the Banda Sea area, even a bunch up north here around Japan. That basically left this area right about here for some further large-scale adjustment in between those large, deep earthquakes. So they weren't really large, but they were super deep earthquakes, and obviously when we get deeper activity, it will add further strain here across the plate boundary. That's the general plate stress out there. If you look on the plate tectonic map, the Pacific plate here, the large Pacific plate moving off to the northwest, Australia plate here moving up to the northeast. Whenever we see deep activity back here across the Tonga Trench, obviously we watch for that further momentum out here. And we had seen a lot of deeper activity bouncing back and forth here in the last couple days. So it was just a matter of time before that larger scale activity stirred up here across the area of the Papua New Guinea region. Now, that is just north here of the Solomon Sea. There is a subduction zone that sits here, but this specific earthquake really not all that deep into the area compared to what we've seen here in all these other regions here. A lot of deeper activity, way deeper than today's quake, jumping over this area back and forth. So filling in a little bit. This is going to be, let's see what we got here for the last 30 days of activity. I believe that's the largest quake so far in the last 30 days out here. Prior to that, we had a 6.2 into the Kuril-Kamchatka Trench there back on the 23rd of October. So starting to fill in a little bit. Of course, these larger earthquakes can trigger a domino effect of other regions here in terms of further plate adjustment. But for now, let's see if we got anything new popping off out here following this event, which struck last night, by the way. It was about 9:30 last night. I think I passed out around 8 o'clock last night. I had been up for pretty much 24 hours there because Missy Mimi's had a super important doctor meeting at 4 in the morning yesterday. So I didn't go to sleep that night. Stayed up, pretty much all night. And, man, I slept pretty solid here, and I needed it after being sick here for a little bit. So, I didn't get a chance to do an update, but that's okay. We got the member drawing coming up here later today as well. It's the 15th of the month, so this is something we do every single month. We give away prizes here on a live drawing to our members. So jump on board and be a member here today for cash prizes if you wish. Or if you want some Earthmaster merchandise or even some geology stuff, like a really cool rock mining kit, that will be up for grabs here later on this afternoon. We'll probably shoot for about 2 o'clock or so in the afternoon, my time. All right, so since that 6.6, we got, a lot of activity stirring up out here. As I said here, these big ones can definitely trigger a domino effect, and we've had at least 5 earthquakes here up to a 5.4 following last night's events. So the latest one following that 6.6 there was a 4.8, a little bit further along the plate boundary here from that 6-pointer. And then we got some activity bouncing back and forth here between this region again. But this is shallow adjustment right here. So we could talk about maybe some larger scale activity across the surface regions here of this little horseshoe bend. Let's see, the latest one, 6 o'clock this morning, 4.8 here in the New Caledonia region. About 3 o'clock in the morning, this area has seen a 5-pointer as well. So we got to look at all these little specific clues to determine potentially where we're going to see some larger activity take place here. And it's equally potentially possible across this whole area we could see some further large-scale movement with the way things are looking right now. Last 30 days, 6-pointer filling in this area. There's a newer activity down here across the New Caledonia region. This, if you absent this earthquake activity from this morning, that would leave a seismic gap here across that area. So we're starting to fill in the seismic gap zones. I guess we could see some surface adjustment across this area here, south of Fiji. But I guess we'll see what happens here. It's not always going to happen and follow the direct pattern, but a lot of times we will see this adjustment take place accordingly. And there's definitely a couple areas to watch here across the Fiji area for some further adjustment. Big island of Hawaii. Last night, a little bit of activity stirring up out there in the 4 range, 4.1, 20 miles deep here into the underneath the Pahala area. Now, this is associated with the hot spot here that the Pacific Plate moves over. And 20 miles deep here, that's going to be having to do with the magma plumbing areas below. A lot of movement here, specifically off the east coast of Hawaii recently. If we go back the last 30 days, you'll see a trail of activity leading off here. But this is underneath this region, deeper activity. And then moving towards the Loihi Seamount here. This is pretty shallow, though. So I thought we were going to see some type of eruption activity following earlier this month's movement down here, because that was a lot of earthquake activity. 64 earthquakes of various magnitudes, including a couple 4s in there as well. About 6 miles deep for all of these earthquakes. No eruption yet, but it is a seamount out there, and it is a growing island. Eventually it will be an island. It's a submarine volcano, but you got to remember, right? The hot spot moves. Well, the hot spot doesn't move, but the Pacific Plate here moves to the northwest, which ultimately will pull over the hot spot and create further islands out in this general direction. So it's a long ways, right, in terms of geology. So we'll never see that in any time. Who knows? It may not even happen in our human lifetime in terms of us as a species. But it's there, and we know it's a hot spot due to several other reasons, aside from this obvious here on the map, right? There's the former Hawaii Islands there that have been covered up throughout time and eroded. But that's the hot spot, very visible. And we're continuing that fashion here down towards the southeast until something gets locked up here. And then it could alter the Pacific Plate. And then, who knows? It could maybe pull it back up this way. It all depends. Either way, it's there on the map. That's a hot spot. We're building new islands out there over time. I wouldn't get into real estate out here because you'll be waiting for a very, very long time. But aside from that, there's that 4-pointer there. Not a whole lot of change going on here. There's a little bit of migration here from the summit area off towards the Middle East Rift Zone. So let's go see here what that's about. Make sure the bells are off, which they are. I'd like to click on this and say, hey, this is working today, but let's take a look on the deformation chart of the Kilauea Summit and Upper East Rift Zone. It's a tilt meter that monitors the data. It looks like the 2-day is working. I'm wondering if somebody complained about that, or maybe they were watching my videos. There's actually quite a few USGS geologists out here that are subscribers of this channel, which I appreciate. But man, that thing was offline for about 40 days or so. So the 2-day chart is working. That's obvious because the amplitude readings here have been adjusted. Prior to that, we had just seen a stationary event with a weird signal every 24 hours, meaning that it was offline. But this is accurate. It looks like it's working. Now, not so much on the past week or the past month data. The amplitudes are way too small. Tell me that this is still offline, both of those stations. But at least we got the 2-day chart here. Maybe they're in the process of getting everything fixed up, which would be nice. But hey, we at least got the 2-day chart up and running. So let's see here. That inflation slightly. I'd like to see the long-term model. That's why I look at these past weeks and past month, but this is all offline. So that is irrelevant. Those amplitude levels are not accurate. which tells me that it's offline. So slight inflation going on across that area. Let's check down here across the... that's a little bit of inflation as well. Let's see what we got for earthquake activity. Aside from the stuff that they're showing us on the map, I do want to... Uh-oh. Froze up there for a second. Not a whole lot of localized activity up here across the upper East Rift Zone, or Middle East Rift Zone. There's that 4-pointer, I believe, from yesterday. A couple other smaller quakes in the area. So it doesn't look like there's anything major going on out here for now in terms of eruption activity. Because as we had seen before, over the past year, or past few months, I should say, we've watched a couple different migration patterns here of magma from the summit area off. Originally, it popped off here to the lower regions. In fact, it actually made a obvious trail of earthquake activity, that there was a magma intrusion from the summit all the way off here to this area, and it looked like it was going down to the Loihi Seamount, which is offshore here, earlier this year. And then eventually it seems like it backbuilt, and then we had a small little eruption here off on the lower, kind of towards the south rift zone here, this area right about here. That was back in June of this year. Just a very small fissure opening, left some giant cracks actually in the ground, but minimal magma flow. And then from there we built up here across this region, and then we watched it slowly. We could see the earthquake activity leading off towards the Middle East Rift Zone, where we've seen the most recent activity here in the last couple months around this area back in September. And that left a little bit more of a magma flow in that area following that little eruption. But now we're at a, kind of a standstill. So I still think there's a good possibility, either some further migration here to the lower East Rift Zone, or maybe even some further activity here in this area. But we just haven't got that further push of accumulation of magma from the areas below. That would do, another type of migrational pattern or an eruption scenario. But, that's kind of why I like to look at these inflation and deflation charts here. It's very important. This gives you a good understanding of what's happening below the surface without actually going down there, right? This is inflation, but this is offline. So long-term models here we can't view because both of these are offline. I hope they get them fixed soon. So we'll continue to watch that and check back on it, but there's not a whole lot happening at this moment. All right, earthquake activity here for California. Cascadia, a little bit of activity stirring up out here from early this morning, right on the Cascadia fold and thrust belt. That's not good. Obviously, it is building up steam out here for the next big 9.0 earthquake that will completely devastate this area. That's not fear-mongering. It's not a scare tactic, because it's been proven throughout history and throughout time. This area has seen a large number of 9.0 earthquakes and above. And they know that for a fact because of tsunami sediment deposits well inland off of the shore. Tsunami records there across Japan. Last large earthquake was back in 1700 out here. So average intervals, depending on who you ask, and the accumulated slip rate out here can run from about 250 up to 500 years. And we're at 324 years. That's pretty easy math. Since 1700, right? So the last big 9-pointer. And who knows when it could happen. It could happen today. It could happen in the next 100 years. We just don't know. We don't know. But obviously it's been building up steam here for a little bit. And here's the other thing. Aside from a 9-pointer or greater, we could see a partial rupture out here. A partial rupture would consist mainly of the southern end here, with up to about an 8.4, maybe an 8.5 down here across the southern end. And it's when we see these full ruptures here along the entire length of the Cascadia that we get the big old 9.0 and above. But who knows? Something to watch. I think tremor plays a big part on that. and not volcanic tremor, but subduction zone tremor. And this occurs away from the subduction zone, which sits away from the interface where the subduction zone begins, right offshore of the Northern California area northward. But the subduction area continues well underneath this region. And that's why these tremor events are away from the interface here to the left and more so on the right. So this is deep activity into the subduction zone. But on the map, it looks like it's at the surface. It's not. 35, 45 kilometers deep into the subduction zone itself. And a pretty healthy number, 325 epicenters from yesterday at the southern end of the Cascadia. I believe it was like that 2 days ago as well, 237 there. So for the last week, let's see what we got here. Quite a bit down here in the south, 1,951 epicenters. A little bit up north, but mainly down here across the southern end. And that's how it's been a lot here this year. More tremor activity across the southern end than pretty much anywhere else along the Cascadia. And when tremor happens, well, if you think about it, the tremor is a result of these two plates here. The Juan de Fuca plate, which is right here as a hole, that is slowly being subducted here by the North American plate. North American plate begins right here at this line where the Cascadia begins. This is the North American plate right here. And this little plate here, it's a combination of three separate plates. You got the Gorda plate, Juan de Fuca, and the Explorer plate up north. This whole area, though, is being subducted at the interface level of the subduction zone. And that's why we get these volcanoes here, subduction zone volcanoes, across the Cascades, Northern California, and up into the Vancouver Island ranges. So it's it makes sense when we see elevated tremor downstream, right? Slippage between the two plates, that we're adding further strain upstream around the locked area. So while areas down dip is a good word because that tells you in your mind that this tremor activity and strain is building upstream from that dip, which is up here across the Cascadia. Makes sense here that the tremor activity is adding further strain out there across the locked area, which sits offshore. That's why we have these ridges and the land is rising out here. It's going to drop big time when we get that big 9-pointer out here. And that's going to be even a worst case scenario for the tsunami potential out there across Northern California, Oregon, Washington, and Vancouver Island range, and probably the rest of the Pacific areas as well. But we'll continue to watch it. You know, it's a fact. The 9-pointer is going to happen in the future, whether it's 100 years from now or tonight. A little bit of activity off on the Blanco fracture zone prior to the Oregon earthquake here, well, offshore of Oregon along the Cascadia. That is a fracture zone, and most of the time here, look at that, just seconds. Seconds later, we had that little 2.6, so some broad scale adjustment happening early this morning, it looks like around 1 o'clock. Since then, nothing yet, but we'll continue to watch that. Northern California, one earthquake there outside of Concord. That is on the Greenville Fault, I believe. Yep. Outside of Vallejo, 2.1 from last night. Far as any major adjustment south here, well, it's not major, but one earthquake here from yesterday off the coast of San Diego near Oceanside, west of Oceanside here, close to the San Diego Trough zone, 2.7 from yesterday, but mostly smaller microquake activity out here today, folks, for California. Nothing major going on. Of course, over the last 7 days or so, a number of earthquakes, including that 4-pointer out in Nevada, quite a few threes out here across the state of California, southern end, and it was scattered all about. It was a broader scale event. And when you mix all of that in with the activity we've seen here in the last couple months there across Malibu, Los Angeles, Puente Hills, Thrust Fault, Bakersfield, Ridgecrest, there's still we got to watch this is basically what I'm saying. It's still possible we could see some further large-scale activity out here. These little quakes do not relieve the strain at all. If anything, it gives us a good indicator of when things could potentially happen. And that's it's a trend. You have to watch it. These fours and threes and elevated swarms and whatnot in certain areas are a good sign that the area is under quite a bit more strain than normal. I mean, obviously, there's a lot of locked areas out here, a lot of strain built up, but it never goes away until we get big earthquakes. These little ones do absolutely nothing. So when we see elevated swarming and even elevated little ones, it makes sense here that we could see larger activity. But for now, California is resting. Yellowstone, nothing showing up there for now, but I do want to give a quick glance here. Yellowstone overview. And seismograph stations, they're pretty quiet. Not a whole lot going on there for now. Let's see, what is that? That almost looks like earthquake activity, but I'm really not seeing it show up there across any other stations. Maybe a couple were in there, but these stations are literally almost on top of each other, so that looks like maybe some type of outside interference, I'm guessing. I don't think that's earthquake activity. One of those, maybe a couple of those maybe, but I don't know. It's nothing really showed up here across any other seismograph station, so whatever's going on is potentially local there to that area. All right, rest of the country out here. Goodness, Texas, earthquake country out in Texas. Who would have thought? They have to deal with tornadoes and hurricanes and whatnot. Now add in earthquakes. Well, that's due mainly, well, there's fault systems out here, but that's mainly due, and statistically it's been proven throughout the years since the oil boom of earthquakes, induced earthquakes out here. Check out, you can go into any of these areas and see that there's oil fields out here nearby. These a couple pads out there, looks like, in these areas. There's not a whole lot, but who knows when this was taken in terms of the satellite imagery. But Texas has a lot. Just down here to the south, all these little checkered pads are some type of oil pumping operations. Over here to the west, big time out here in this area where this earthquake activity is occurring near Midland. I was out here a couple times earlier this year doing some storm chasing and whatnot. I love Texas, but man, they got oil fields everywhere. In fact, people have these oil pumping operations in their backyard. Literally, you can go through a town out there, and people have one of those doohickeys there. The pumping arm, it looks like a hammer, kind of like a pickaxe in a way, going back and forth, pumping the oil from the ground. They have those in their backyard within the city limits. That is crazy. But hey, that's big time money out there. But also, guess what's in the future for these guys? Earthquakes, and that's a fact there. Quite a few wastewater ponds here, wastewater disposal ponds. They inject that back into the surface below. A whole process involved here. But as you can see, that's just the facts here. These guys are going to have earthquakes here for the foreseeable future. And some of those, they can get pretty big, up in the 5 range there if you get enough strain and collapse out there of the area. Quite a few over there as well. All right, let's move on past that. That's just the facts there. Now, whether that's relieving any further strain out here across the New Madrid, I doubt it. The North American plate is always underneath a strain. New Madrid zone out here. It takes a little bit of time to see some big earthquakes out here. I can't remember the slip rate, but this area seen a series of large 7.0 earthquakes there, mid to upper 7s, back in 1811 and 1812. So we're talking about over 200 years since those big earthquakes, and we get a series of earthquakes out here. Not that big, obviously, but earlier this month, 3.7 in that area of the New Madrid zone. And as you can see, a handful of smaller quakes in there as well, some 2s and 1s and whatnot. And that right there just tells us and reminds us that this fault system is not dead, and it's fairly much alive and potentially building up, for the next big earthquake out here. The slip rate is not super high, so I don't know if there's enough strain built up out here for another 7-pointer, but for now. But you never know. A number of factors. Oklahoma out there outside of Medford, little 2.3. I think there's some oil fields out here as well. Yeah, a bunch of. See this name right here. Got an oil field out in that location. And some of these maps may not even be showing the recent activity or older activity. They're always updating the maps out here. So there might be some years they'll do oil field operations and then it gets covered up by the vegetation or farmland. But there's that 2.3 coming in out there out in the beautiful state of Oklahoma. All right, let's see what else we got here across the globe. We got a newer event up here off the Japan area. It looks like 7 o'clock this morning. My time, 7:41, so that's just about ready to drop off the hour map here with the red circle. 29 miles deep here. Now, at 6.7 there, definitely looks like things have adjusted backstream here. You got to remember that's where all that pressure's going here. You get earthquake activity along the plate boundary. That can adjust the plate accordingly to the northwest here, which would result in more strain back along this area here, including New Zealand. And it looks like that's exactly what took place since last night. A swarm of shallower adjustment across the entire plate boundary. Skipping over New Zealand, looks like a couple fives down here across the triple point area of those plates. But New Zealand, right in the middle of all that. So we'll definitely watch New Zealand between these larger events that has been adjusted following that 6.6 last night. I definitely want to watch that area. Some threes stirring up there prior. And this 3.2 South Island looks like it was just following that 6.6 there from last night. But we'll definitely watch that area of the plate boundary. I mean, it makes sense, right? It's right along the main plate boundary here, and we got activity north and south there of New Zealand. Some smaller activity out there around Afghanistan and China, some fours. Heavily populated here with earthquakes out across the Mediterranean here, as you can see on the globe, but nothing big. Some fours there from yesterday, a handful of deeper activity, but I'm not seeing anything major going on there for now. 2.7 looks like it just came in as I'm chatting about it. The Atlantic Ocean, pretty quiet. Middle America Trench here off the Mexico area, been quite active here recently. 5-pointer off the Costa Rica area. I know Alaska, man, that was moving around last night. I was about ready to cover this, and then I just passed out last night. I was just so tired. I can't do it anymore. I can't stay up for 24 hours. I didn't mean to, but we had a couple important appointments early in the morning yesterday. Some fours and fives stirring up out there in the Aleutian Trench late afternoon, early evening yesterday. Looks like things have chilled there a little bit. Not a whole lot of further activity since that event, since those events are yesterday. So I think for now, main areas to watch is going to be a region out here across this area of the world where we've seen that 6-pointer from early this morning or late last night. Watch the New Zealand area here. Definitely could see some events out here. It makes sense. Eventually it has to go. I mean, New Zealand sits along a major plate boundary. A lot more strain and stress out here and warping of the plate. With very minimal adjustment going on here recently. I don't know what we've had. Really not a whole lot here. Above 4.5. One deeper earthquake event here. 4.6 off the North Island coast earlier this month. That could be associated here with the Hikurangi potentially, or maybe even the southern end here of the Kermadec Trench. Hard to say, but deeper events underneath North Island there have been pretty fairly active. Not showing it so much on this map, but we've seen a lot of smaller, deeper activity underneath this area with really no major adjustment, no release of steam, so to speak. All right, let's see what else we got here, folks. Space weather. Things calming down as I had explained there yesterday and the day before, entering into a little quiet period here. Not a whole lot of sunspots on the visible disk. I mean, we have a couple of them, but they're all fairly stable. Let's go ahead and take a look here at the magnetogram image, which we can basically see the complexity of the magnetic polarities here. And this area has just went south real quick. Not a whole lot of complexity within this area. So I'm really not expecting too much. We might see another C flare, or maybe even a low-grade M flare from this little area, but really nothing expected in terms of large solar flares. And as you can see, fairly quiet out there on the rest of the solar disk. Far side of the sun, let's go ahead and take a look here. It's going to be, I think it's going to be a few days before we see anything of maybe, half noteworthy value. There's a regional sunspot group here on the far side of the sun. This was from yesterday, so this image is a little old. So these sunspot groups here are a little bit closer here to the eastern limb. But even looking at these sunspots on the coverage area, they do not look all that large. These are former sunspots that were out here 10 days or more when they were out on the Earth-facing side of the sun. Now they're on the far side, getting ready to come back around the bend, around the eastern limb here. But I'm really not even all that impressed with that region. Yeah, they had grown for a little bit while they were on the far side, but see right there, and then all of a sudden they start to dissipate. So I'm really not all that impressed with this area group right here, which means we'll probably be entering into a little bit of solar boringness, I guess is the word for it. A little bit of auroras peeking up out right now, and I'm guessing that's due to the coronal holes here that have been facing the Earth. Some extended solar wind stream flowing from these holes, affecting the auroras right now. The solar wind stream there hitting Earth a little bit. Let's see what our solar wind real time solar wind. I don't know if I have that bookmarked or not, which I didn't. Oh yeah, see. So here is a BZ component of the interplanetary magnetic field. Spit that out properly. Here's a northward tilt, southward tilt of this line, and it's been wide open here for a number of days, allowing some solar wind stream, general solar wind stream to flow in. Normally, if we just have a couple of coronal holes facing us and the general wind stream flowing in, we won't see the amplification there of the auroras due to it being fairly stable in terms of this BZ component, either at stationary or northward tilt. But with this being south of the line, that allows any solar wind stream to flow in and amplify the aurora conditions. And it doesn't even have to be a large amount of solar wind stream flowing in. It will kick up, similar to what we're seeing right now. So there's the forecast there across this area where folks are probably sleeping. Who knows? So they got a potential of seeing the auroras out there. It may linger into this evening as well. Not forecasted, but as long as that BZ component there is a southward tilt, south of that line, bottom of that line, I should say, that will allow the amplification there of the auroras, even with this really wimpy solar wind stream that's flown in. All right, let's see here. Yeah, so nothing forecasted there, but as long as that stays southward pointing, we'll get that aurora amplification, and who knows, maybe tonight we'll see a little bit. Not expecting a whole lot, mainly in the normal locations there, Canada, Alaska, Greenland, Iceland. Storm Prediction Center out here. Severe weather? Well, not likely. In fact, there's nothing forecasted here for thunderstorms. That's pretty crazy. Our next severe weather shot here down in Texas as we head, this looks like Sunday into Monday. So this weekend into early next week, slight risk for some severe weather returning to the area. Abilene could be some tornado activity out there. We'll have to cover that as we get closer to that time period. Here's today's GFS model. Pretty decent low pressure system here that we just got through dealing with here in California. Not a whole lot of rain, but the Chico area, I don't know if Redding had any or not, but Chico area had some thunderstorms last night due to all the cold air. That obviously out of our area now. Our next chance of rain maybe beginning early next week. There's our severe weather there across Oklahoma and Texas as we head into end of the weekend, early next week. Same areas that just got through dealing with some severe weather here recently and tornado activity. This is going to be a severe weather maker for tornadoes, I think. Just the way that this low pressure is set up and pulling in the moisture there from the southwest. That definitely a severe weather day. And it could be what just happened there? That was weird. I don't even see how that happened. Could be a couple days there, it looks like. Sunday into Monday, moves northward. Maybe some more moisture there for the south. That's going to be the remnants of that hurricane or tropical system there. That thing took a well southwestward turn, which is good news there for the Florida area. But there's going to be some moisture there that low pressure is going to be tapping into. And looks like Florida get hit with a little bit of precipitation, but no hurricane activity. Look at that massive bomb low pressure system there in the northeast. Pretty significant there. Rain for Northern California, hopefully. I mean, I still have yet to have a decent, oh, wow, this is a good soaking type of event. We've only gotten a couple hundredths of an inch of rain from each system here, and it's nothing. I mean, it's enough to maybe dampen the topsoil layer, but we need some rain out here in Northern California. Oregon and Washington have been getting hammered, and that's typical in a La Nina pattern. But, sharing is caring, so let's drop that storm track there a little bit. I'll appreciate it. All right, let's see what else we got here. Any major asteroid approaches out here? Hopefully not. Not looking to exit this world today. That one's pretty close. 36-foot bus-size asteroid here coming tomorrow. 273,000 miles. That's safe. But that's still a little close. 36 foot. That is, let's see, the average distance here from the moon to Earth varies. The average, it looks like, is about 238,000 miles, but it can be further than that for the distance from the moon. So that's coming within the distance, potentially within the Earth-Moon distance. But even so, that's super safe. Earlier this year, we had a small asteroid come in within about 12,000 miles of the Earth. So from there, we can actually check out the near-Earth asteroid object visualization tool, where we can look at a pretty neat little model and see how close these asteroids get to the Earth, and whether there's any type of potential of it hitting the planet and whatnot on a pretty cool scale. And we can zoom in and whatnot and add thousands upon thousands of near-Earth objects from various groups. But for now, I don't think we need to do that. I mean, it's 273,000 miles away. That's pretty safe. But when they get down to about 30,000 miles or so to the planet, maybe even about 50,000, I'd like to open up the orbital viewer and see what the potentials are of a impact on the planet. But that's pretty safe there. The rest of the asteroids out there, considerably safe. So they say. All right, a little earthquake activity there on China Lake. That's down in Southern California. Let me go see here real quick what's going on. It's showing up on the seismograph stations there. That's earthquake activity, but nothing showing up here yet. generally small microquake activity in the last 24 hours, but we'll see what happens here today. Keep an eye on New Zealand. Area around Fiji still absent of earthquake activity across this little region. And let me show you guys historically this area. There's so many earthquakes here. It's unreal. There's the deeper activity, so that's going to be this region right around here where it's somewhat absent in earthquake activity right now. And historical models here shows us that it's a pretty active region with a lot of earthquakes here historically. So absent region, seismic gap with all this activity around it could potentially fill in here across that region. But New Zealand, I think, definitely want to be watching that today. All right, folks, I'm out of here. My voice is somewhat better, getting better. Now Missy Mimi's is starting to get irritated again with her voice and congestion and stuff going on. It's just been a lingering odd year. I never ever get sick, and this has been something that's affecting my voice box here for a little while. So I don't know what it is. I don't know what's floating in the air, but something. I talked to a few folks locally around here in Northern California as well that's been dealing with it. They said it's, I've lived here most of my life as well. They said it has something to do with the rice fields, but the rice fields, they burn them at the end of the season. They let everything all dry out after they harvest it. They burn the rice fields. All that smoke and chemicals and stuff go right into town, and here we are breathing it. But I've never had any issues with it throughout the years, and I've lived here, the majority of my life in Northern California. So, maybe something's going on here. Maybe my body's not liking it after all these years. I don't know, but I think it's more just like a case of bronchitis that's just kind of lingering around for a little bit longer than I want it to. We'll see you guys back out here a little bit later on this afternoon, folks. So we'll be out here in person live about 2 o'clock. We're going to shoot for a 2 o'clock afternoon time period. It's just now almost 9 a.m. California time. So we'll do the member drawing here later this afternoon. We'll put everyone that is a member into our fishbowl. I'm actually going to go over here and pick me up a better container for the member drawing, and then we'll give away some prizes. I might just do 2 lucky winners today. I'm feeling kind of generous here, so we've done a number of them. In fact, I think the most I've ever done was 4, right? In one drawing, if I remember right. Normally we'll just do 1, but maybe we'll do 2 today. We'll do 2 today. So jump on board, be a member. Aside from the member drawings each month, you get extra videos, extra emojis, all sorts of goodies in there. And I'm thinking of some new ideas. I've been thinking about it for a little bit, but it doesn't help being sick, no sleep. Yeah, you name it. So, all right, folks, have a good day. We'll see you guys back out here this afternoon for the member drawing, which will be live. It'll be a second live stream. So aside from the live stream that's going on right now, it'll be a secondary live stream. All right, see you guys back out here a little bit later on. Take care.